Today on Pilot's Discretion, we're joined by Aviation Consumer editor Larry Anglisano. He tells us about smart avionics decisions, the state of the insurance market, and riding motorcycles. Pilot's Discretion starts right now. Hi, pilots. I'm John Zimmerman, and thanks for listening to Pilot's Discretion from Sporties. Visit sporties.com/podcast for today's show links and access to our archives, where you can listen to every episode. And remember to send us your comments, questions, and guest suggestions. You can email us at podcast@sporties.com. Today, my guest is Larry Anglisano, currently the editor-in-chief of Aviation Consumer magazine. He has been a contributor there for 30 years and has also written for AvWeb, IFR Magazine, and Flying. Larry is an active pilot with ratings for airplanes, seaplanes, and gliders, and he's also a longtime avionics repairman with decades of experience working on light aircraft. He has his finger on the pulse of the GA industry more than about anybody I know, and is not afraid to speak frankly about what he sees. So Larry, welcome to Pilot's Discretion.
Thanks, John, and congratulations on reaching 100 of these good podcasts. Things were going so well for you, John, until Anglisano came on. So
I don't know about that. We're going to make you earn it today, Larry. So let's start with what you spend a lot of your time on, which is you have a great segment in Aviation Consumer called Panel Planner 101. And it really highlights to me some of the tough decisions that buyers face in the current avionics retrofit market. Some of it's a good thing. We have more choices and more options than ever before, perhaps. But if I'm considering a new panel, at a high level, what are some things I should be thinking about? Or maybe more importantly, what are some mistakes I should definitely avoid?
well, you should be thinking of the future. And it's something that a lot of buyers don't think about. You think short term, and you really should be thinking long term. And that includes, where do you see yourself flying the airplane a few years from now? If you're not instrument rated, do you plan to be instrument rated? And do you think your mission may change? You may fly the airplane locally. Do you think you might travel with it? And then think about maintaining it, maintaining the avionics and adding to it, getting back into the installation and adding more options that maybe you didn't buy now. And even most importantly is establishing a good relationship with the shop that's doing the installation. Because, when I started in the avionics world back in 1990, even 1989, on a part-time basis, I worked through college. You only saw your avionics shop once every 10, 15, 20 years sometimes, because you install a King KX155 and a transponder and maybe a analog HSI if you got real fancy. And the only time you really need to see the shop was when you had to go back for your pitot-static and transponder checks. In fact, when I started, there weren't even blind encoders. That was before the day of Mode C. But it's very different now because, as we all know, avionics have become very software intensive, lots of software updates, and you need to pick a shop that you are comfortable with dealing with on a regular basis. So that's an important part of the decision, is picking a shop that you can stick with for the long term.
That's a great point, overlooked by people, I think, sometimes, that you're going to be working with your shop, your avionics shop, about as closely as your maintenance shop once you put in some nice avionics. But it feels to me like there are more options than ever before for going one piece at a time. It used to be, if I'm going to quote unquote do a new panel, it meant a fully integrated glass cockpit. There's lots of good options now where I could do a Garmin G5 or maybe two of those, or an Aspen display. I could upgrade my non-WAS GPS. I could kind of chip away at different pieces of it. Do you think that's a wise strategy, building one piece at a time, or is it better to save up my time and money and kind of go all in and do the panel?
Well, it usually turns out to be all in. I think by the time the avionics shop gets a hold of you, and to the credit of most good shops, they can sort of look into their crystal ball and ask the right questions. And like I just said a few seconds ago, where do you plan to be with this airplane in a few years? And there's something to be said. There's money to be saved by doing a lot while the airplane is opened up. And it especially these days where it takes sometimes a year to get into an avionics shop. And that's something that we haven't seen in the past. We've seen these scheduling delays that don't seem to be getting better. So you really want to be going through another panel retrofit in a year or two. And sometimes the decision is easy just to do it all at once. But to your point, we are seeing some options for onesie twosie kind of thing. Maybe you put a couple of Garmin G5s in, and or maybe a GI 275, and the whole philosophy behind Garmin's GI 275 electronic flight instrument is his building block mentality, where you can add these instruments one at a time. But you still have to get into the wiring, and there's still a fair amount of interface between the displays and what else is in the airplane. So I think it really depends on budget. It depends on what you plan to do at the airplane, and sometimes it does make sense to go all in.
A part of that that inevitably comes up is the topic of autopilots. These are really hot right now. Garmin's GFC 500 has been one of the most popular upgrades I know in our shop here at Sporty's, but they can be deceptively complicated, right? An autopilot is not a plug and play kind of thing. So, what are some considerations that might not be so obvious if I'm thinking about adding an autopilot to my project?
The amount of level of teardown it takes to put an autopilot in, because not only are you dealing with the electronics and the radio stack and the electrical side of it, you're dealing with the hardware behind the scenes, servos, right? You got roll servo, you got pitch servo. In many cases, you've got a trim servo. Some cases, you've got a yaw servo, and that's all very airframe intensive with a lot of teardown. And my advice has always been, well, let me back up. My advice has always been to start in the radio stack first and start with the fundamentals. And of course, that's the audio panel. Everything is built around the audio system these days, and there's some really good choices in modern audio. But you basically build around the radio stack and cover all the basics first. Got to have a good, reliable transponder. You've got to have ADS-B out in most places. And then you go from there, and then you start talking about displays and GPS navigators, and then inevitably the decision turns to autopilots. And if an autopilot is in your plans, my advice has always been to do whatever you can to get it installed while you're doing the rest of the big stuff, because you're not going to want to open it up again and do the interface in phase two. I just don't think it makes sense. The good thing, though, is we've seen prices on autopilots, at least from the hardware standpoint, the labor isn't any less. It's still the same amount of teardown, but we've seen prices on autopilots come down, right? I mean, the Garmin GFC 500 is one example. Yeah, I mean, people can argue it's not cheap, and it's not, but it's not a $30,000 system either. It's affordable for a basic single engine airplane these days, and it's very capable.
You and I have been talking here about avionics, but there's another part of the airframe upgrade process that you could not call a revolution, and that's piston engines. We're basically flying with the same technology we had at the end of World War II. Recently, there's been some activity there. We've got V8 engines, we've got lightweight turbines, electric motors. Some people even want to do hydrogen. So put on your glass half full hat here, Larry. Is there a technology solution here that's going to make engines catch up to what we've done in avionics, or are we pretty much stuck in the Lycoming continental world short term?
Well, I hope we're not stuck in Lycoming continental world, because there's some real dissatisfaction in that part of the market. One thing I hear consistently from readers and folks that flag me down at some of these air shows, like just coming off Sun and Fun, is the eye-watering price of engines and the backlog to get an engine. And that's both certified and experimental. I've got a fellow that here at my local field that built a pretty nice RV10, and it was years to get a Lycoming Thunderbolt engine. That's not sustainable. So I think there's a real desire from a consumer standpoint for lower prices and more availability and more technology. And to your question, will engine technology catch up to what we've seen in avionics? I think it will. And one engine manufacturer I've had my eyes on for a couple of years now is Rotax. If you've never flown a Rotax 912, which is their basic 100 horsepower 912 series, both fuel injected or carbureted, it's a smooth running, pretty bulletproof engine as it's turned out to be. And Rotax has expanded on the 912 series up into higher horsepower engines. I just spent some time at Lockwood Aviation in Florida and spent some time with Phil Lockwood, and he was showing off a RV9 project that he's had in the works. We've covered it in the magazine, and it's the 916 in this RV9, and all computer controlled and liquid cooled and all that. To me, that's the epitome of a modern airplane engine. Yeah, it's more complex than a Lycoming or a Continental, but I think it's the kind of technology that the savvy buyer has kind of been waiting for.
And do you think the Mosaic rule that we're all crossing our fingers for and hoping is going to come out later this year, do you think that will help with engines and or avionics, or is that just mostly going to be fiddling around the edges here?
Well, it may take a while before it trickles down to engine technology. You got to realize we've made some pretty good strides in the avionics world. You and I were both standing around at, I think it was Oshkosh or maybe it was Sun and Fun all those years back when EAA announced that STC for the Dynon experimental EFIS for certified airplanes. I mean, we were almost speechless. Imagine all the years we talked about putting experimental avionics in certified airplanes, and here we had an STC for the Dynon D10A, and the industry sort of never looked back. So we've gotten better in our ability to embrace new hardware at lower cost. But I hope the same thing can happen in the engine world because it's a market that desperately needs new engine technology, more so now than ever.
So this whole conversation about engines and avionics, it really, to me, it reinforces the importance of being an educated aircraft owner, educated pilot for sure. But if you own an airplane, it feels like now more than ever, you need to be an educated owner. Why do you think that? Do you agree with me? I guess number one, does that matter more now than ever? And if so, why?
Yeah, I agree with you. You really need to be an educated owner, and you need to, as we said, you need to establish a relationship with a shop that you trust, both avionics and maintenance. And I might add, there's another problem in this maintenance world. A lot of shops are turning work away, and we're seeing shortages of techs on the shop floor. We're seeing long back orders, and I hear quite frequently from owners with piston airplanes, nice piston airplanes. Shops are turning them away because they're not turbines. And that's where the big money is in wrenching turbine airplanes, and in many cases, that leaves owners with a problem. Where do I take my airplane to get it worked on? So it's a problem that I think a lot of folks are faced with now, is finding a good shop to work with.
Yeah, there's an aging fleet out there that we all know about, which somebody described it to me. I thought maybe a tad dramatically, but not incorrect. They said, we're really in a restoration business. We think about restoration as I'm going to go fix up the, 1946 Cub, or I'm going to go restore a V-tail Bonanza. But if you're flying a 1982 Cessna 210 and you're fixing it up maybe for the third time in that airplane's history, you're in the restoration business, and that can be fun and rewarding and can be a much more affordable way to own an airplane than a brand new one, but does come with it a certain need for expertise and good relationships with shops that it's not the same job as it was maybe 40 years ago.
No, it's not, and there's a lot of bad information out there. For as good as the internet is, and there's a lot of good resources out there. There's a lot of places to go for good advice, but there's also bad advice that tags along with it. Some of these forums get rolling, and there's some bad information, and you know, eh, Aviation Consumer has sort of filled that void for a lot of years, and we call it as we see it. It's really deep diving material, and it's a resource that I've been pretty proud to deliver to the market for a lot of years. It's important, and you know, an educated buyer. Um, I've seen a lot of people get stung, and I've seen a lot of people get stung buying airplanes that they probably shouldn't have bought. No matter how many times we tell people to get good pre-buy inspections and take your time, go through the paperwork, go through the logbooks, really pay attention to this airplane before you sign away on the dotted line. People are still buying airplanes that um, they're paying too much for, and they're buying airplanes that, in many cases, aren't even airworthy. It's becoming such a problem where shops that are so busy with their own customers, and they're actually turning some customers away. They're saying, "Bring this airplane back when you've straightened out all the squawks, and then we'll think about working on it." So some shops are being that selective. So if you're buying a used airplane, boy, oh boy, buy the right one and work with somebody that you can trust during the pre-buy process.
Yeah, I think Aviation Consumer fills such a great role there. I'm a longtime fan, as you know, and the advice on pre-buys is so important. If you think you're saving money or time by skipping the pre-buy, you're just kidding yourself. You can pay me now or pay me later, but you are going to pay eventually. So that advice really matters.
Well, there's a lot of traps too, and as simple as it may seem, like, okay, let's use a Cessna Skylane as an example. The airplane is represented as being IFR. It's an IFR airplane, right? But you go thumbing through the logbooks, but you can't find the last time the static system has been certified, right? The pitot static transponder and all that other, it's FAR 91, 411, and 413 has to be done every 2 years. Well, how could the airplane be represented as being IFR uh, capable when it doesn't even have a current pitot static check? It's those kinds of things that can lead a buyer to spending a lot more money than they thought, because you say, well, it's only a pitot static check. Well, you get the airplane back to your mechanic, they do a pitot static check, and now the system leaks. And now you're changing airspeed indicators, you're chasing static leakage, you're changing lines. Next thing you know it, you've got a $2,000 repair bill for fixing the static system on an airplane that was being represented as being IFR certified. And there's a million and one examples like that tag along with buying a used airplane.
All right, Larry, let's take a quick break. And when we come back, I want to switch and talk about insurance a little bit. Hey, pilots, let's be honest. Once you pass your check ride, flying isn't just about checklists and maneuvers. It's about making smart decisions and adjusting when things don't go as planned. That's where VFR and IFR mastery from Pilot Workshops come in. Every month, you'll get brand new flying scenarios, one for VFR pilots and one for IFR pilots, designed to challenge your decision-making skills in a safe, risk-free environment. Led by Pilot Workshop's award-winning team of flight instructors, these scenarios focus on practical flying tips and real-world strategies that make you a more confident, more prepared pilot. Whether it's handling tricky weather, navigating unexpected airspace issues, or making tough go, no-go calls, Mastery helps sharpen the skills you actually use in the cockpit. It's more than just reading an article or watching a video. It's a multi-step, interactive experience that even includes a community section where you can talk with other pilots about their decision-making process. I've been a panelist for Mastery, and I can tell you it's one of the most educational and fun experiences of my aviation career. So I invite you to join thousands of other pilots who rely on these expert insights to stay sharp. Sign up for a free trial of VFR or IFR Mastery today at pilotworkshops.com and take your flying to the next level. That's pilotworkshops.com. Now, back to Pilot's Discretion. We are back with Larry Anglisano, who has been one of the leading journalists covering the aviation insurance market over the last really decade. And Larry, the market has been through some swings. It's been pretty hard over the last few years. Feels like maybe it's thinking about softening a little bit lately towards the end of 2024. Tell us where you think we are now and how we got there.
Well, I hope it's getting better because it's not a good situation for a lot of pilots, especially the so-called senior pilots. And you've seen that word in aviation consumer and in my language for a number of years now. And you're labeled a senior pilot when you're 70 years old, according to the insurance companies. And with that means you might see some huge price increases in your premium. You may be dropped. And unfortunately, there's two problems here. It's forcing some folks that can keep flying out of aviation, sell the airplane, buy a boat or something. And in some cases, it's causing people to self-insure. And that's something that we definitely don't recommend. I mean, that's just bad business. But what we're seeing is pilots that fly retracts, twins, definitely turbines, and in many cases, tailwheel airplanes are having problems getting insurance. And, I've been pretty vocal about it. We've sort of covered it ad nauseum in the magazine. It's getting to be too much almost. But, you know, I, I don't think insurance companies are looking at pilots as carefully as they should be because yeah, there are pilots that are over 70 or in their 80s that really have no business flying an airplane. We've all flown with them. But there are others that are better than I'll ever be at 55 years old. And so I think that needs to change. And I think it is. We're seeing some signs that on the brokering side, using AI as a way to sort of change the way we quote insurance policies. ForeFlight recently introduced um, a program, a desktop program, where you can put your current policy in, and they'll sort of tell you where your policy should fall from a dollar standpoint based on other folks with the similar airplanes, similar time and make and model, and can help you shop the market a little bit better. But I think we're seeing some more modern ways of calculating risk. And I certainly welcome that because I think it's long overdue.
I welcome that as well. I think that what I've always understood about the aviation insurance market is that the lower end, especially Piston, is human being rarely looks at that in the underwriting process. It's going through a formula and spit out the other side. And maybe you get into turbine and you get some human eyeballs on it. But we can learn some things from the automotive market and how we price risk. And so I look forward to that. Some of the people trying to use more data, AI, I hope it works. But on the pilot side, for me, what can I do to make myself an attractive insurance customer? Is there training? Is there matching the airplane to me? Is there maintenance? Should I have a particular relationship with my broker? What can I do right now to make my next insurance renewal go better?
Well, don't crash, for one. And second is loyalty counts. We've talked to insurance executives, and there seems to be an agreement that loyalty counts. And the last thing you want to do, particularly if you're a pilot in your 50s or 60s, even near 70, if you've got good insurance in place, is to go jumping carriers. You don't want to do that. Loyalty counts. And the other thing that you definitely want to do is fly. You want to fly as much as you possibly can and show that broker or insurance company that you're serious about training. If you've always wanted to get a seaplane rating or go fly gliders, go do it because that matters. They like to see that you're flying a lot, you're taking it seriously, you're training. If you're in a complex high performance twin, they may require that you go to someplace like SimCom or Flight Safety, and you got to accept it. But what you can do is not crash, be loyal to your company, and show that company that you're flying a lot and you're doing everything you can to be as safe as you can. It's about all you can do.
Okay, Larry, we always close with our pilot's discretion ready to copy segment. So I'll throw out some questions here, rapid fire style. on a wide range of topics. I think I know enough about you to throw some curveballs. So, are you ready to copy?
Uh-oh. I think so.
You do a ton of product reviews. So, what is your biggest pet peeve when doing one of those?
Biggest pet peeve when doing a product review. Oh boy, that's a tough one. Pet peeve is reading other reviews from folks that didn't really do a review. And that goes back to that bad information that's out there on some of these forums, and people talking about specs that are incorrect. And so yeah, that one of my biggest pet peeves is when I do the research and dive deeply into these topics, these subjects, is uncovering bad information, and that doesn't help anybody.
I'd agree with that. We have a rule here at Sporty's that before we sell it, somebody needs to have flown with it, because if you're just reading a spec sheet, it's not going to go well. An avionics question, perhaps controversial. Is it time to get rid of my old Garmin 430?
I'll say no. We've if it still works, I say keep using it till it display quits, and then change it.
What is one question I should always ask my avionics shop before signing up for a job?
Do you anticipate any cost overruns? And if so, when will you advise me of it?
That's a very good one. What is the most overlooked or underappreciated part of the typical GA panel? Something that matters, but most pilots really don't think about.
Transponder.
What is something the certified airplane world needs to adopt from the experimental world? Something they do better.
That's a tough one to answer, because we're seeing very similar capabilities and technology that we can thank the experimental world for. But I would say more leniency in installation, more leniency to install something that may not have an STC.
Why are post-maintenance flights so risky, and what should I do to stay safe?
Ooh, that's a big one. You need to take it very seriously, and it's one thing I saw when I was on the shop level is folks just didn't take it seriously. And I didn't realize I saw these airplanes all over the hangar floor for months at a time, and owners had no idea how much disassembly these airplanes have seen. And I've seen a pretty nonchalant attitude to flying airplanes after maintenance, and that's just not good. Expect it's going to kill you.
That's good advice. That's one of the statistics show. It's one of the most dangerous flights you'll make all year, is that first flight after annual or major maintenance.
And it's not just maintenance. It's jobs like paint work, right? Your aircraft's been getting in for a nice paint job, and control surfaces were removed. We've seen some pretty hair-raising wrecks where aircraft have come out of paint shops, and boy, there've been some pretty ugly fly-offs.
Another topic you have covered extensively is the transition to unleaded avgas. This could obviously be its entire own podcast, but on a scale of 1 to 10, with 1 being a total train wreck and 10 being perfection, how bad is it right now?
It's a total train wreck, for the simple reason. We've all heard of G100 UL, GAMI's unleaded avgas, that has an STC. It's been STC approved for most every spark ignition engine in the airplane database. And by not accepting an STC as a means for certification, we're sort of shooting the whole STC concept down that's worked for years. And I'm not sure why it's not working now for this field thing. Like you say, that's a topic in itself that we seem to cover every month in the magazine. But yeah, I'd call it a train wreck.
And so, what is the chance we have a significant percentage of the GA fleet burning unleaded fuel by 2030, which is the industry's own target? What's the chance we actually get some meaningful progress by that deadline?
I don't think the chance is very good.
On that exciting note, let's switch to motorcycles, Larry, because I know you're a motorcycle guy, and I feel like there's a lot of motorcycle pilot crossover out there. So does flying make you more conservative when you ride? Does it make motorcycle riding a release from the rigidity of flying? How do you think about your motorcycle rider brain and your pilot brain?
Well, when I get on the motorcycle, I got a couple of them, and I've gotten more conservative over the years, but I put my flying brain on when I climb on the motorcycle. It's a very similar mentality. I find myself walking around the motorcycle and looking at the parts and components and just doing almost a pre-flight inspection of the motorcycle, right? And it's a very similar mentality from start to finish. And I have the same. My mind is in the same place when I taxi back in after a flight as I do when I roll back in into the garage. Like I completed another mission and always in a bubble. And, because this thing wants to kill you or the people around you want to kill you. It's rough out there.
All right, so I'm going to try to draw one more connection because I know you're also an endurance athlete. And I'm wondering if there's some similarity of mindset there. I know when I go out on a long run, I sort of slip into pilot mode. I'm focused, the outside world disappears. Maybe there's not the same risk management approach, but what do you think? Is there something there?
Yeah, maybe. Maybe I use my distance. I'm a cyclist, and I use it as an opportunity to think about my editorial world. A lot of the stories I write come from long hours on the saddle on the bicycle, and so I kind of try to put work away. But riding bicycles is a way for me to kind of gather my thoughts, and it's a good escape.
Let's talk music because you're a recording musician. So I want a comparison here. What is harder, learning guitar or learning to fly?
Oh, learning guitar, hands down.
That's gonna upset some
Hands
of
down.
our pilot listeners now. So you're gonna have to defend that.
Oh man, I don't. I've people have asked me it before, and I tell them, I know I can put an airplane back on the runway. It may not be pretty, but I know I can do it. But I'm pretty sure that I can't land that jazz chord progression cleanly every time. It's not going to happen. Uh, Playing music is probably the most difficult thing I've ever done in my life, and I'll never master it. But it sure is fun trying.
So playing a live gig or landing at Oshkosh, which one is more exciting?
Well, they're both equally as frightening. But I would say landing at Oshkosh Air Venture is probably more exciting to me.
All right.
Yeah, I play elevator music. I'm a contemporary smooth jazz guy, so I'm not a long-haired rocker. I play elevator music, so I would say the Air Venture arrival is a lot more exciting.
Unfortunately for me, you're a Yankees fan. It's a testament to what a good guy you are that we're still friends and you root for the Yankees. So tell me, in your totally unbiased opinion, is Aaron Judge better than Shohei Ohtani?
Yeah, he's better. He's the best player in baseball right now, hands down. And I've never really been a big fan, only because he makes so much money. But he's a heck of a good football player, and I've always been a Yankees fan. Brooklyn-born guy that I am, and just a diehard Yankees fan, and different team than what it's been when I grew up as a kid, but it's still fun to watch.
Yeah, we made it through the whole podcast, and I agreed with so much of what you said, but that's just a ridiculous opinion. So we'll have to agree to disagree on that one. Larry, our last question is always the same on this podcast. You have one final flight. We want to know, what are you flying and where are you going?
I want to fly in a space shuttle. I want to experience a re-entry burn in the space shuttle. I am absolutely, all I do lately is watch space shuttle old documentaries and stuff. I'm just really into space flight lately, and not quite sure why. I always have been, but more so lately. Yeah, I want to experience a re-entry burn in the space shuttle and put it back on the runway in Florida.
Larry, thanks for being on the podcast.
Thanks for having me. It's an honor.
Thanks for listening to Pilot's Discretion, brought to you by Sporty's, training and equipping pilots worldwide for over 60 years. For more episodes and today's show links, visit sportys.com/podcast. I'm John Zimmerman. We'll see you next time on Pilot's Discretion.